Welcome to Antarctica Did That For Me. We're a podcast for everyday people with a little adventure in their hearts. We're Keri and Cassa, and we've spent huge chunks of our time living and working in Antarctica. Welcome to a journey that changed our lives. We hope it will change yours too. Hello and welcome to another episode of Antarctica Did That For Me. I am your host, Keri Nelson, and I'm sitting here with my co-host,
Cassa Grant. Nice to be here.
Cassa Grant. Hey, Cassa. And we are going to have a episode this week that is pretty near and dear to both of our hearts, because this week, at least the week that we're doing this recording, is special to all Antarcticans, and that is, it is Midwinter week. And we're about to talk about a celebration all Antarctic bases across the country, across the continent, no matter what country or nation those bases are from, are celebrating. And that is Midwinter Day, and probably having some sort of midwinter celebration. It's a historic celebration. People celebrated this back in the day when the original Age of Heroes and the explorers came through, and we're still celebrating it even today. It's a pretty important thing. What do you think about this, Cassa?
Yeah, I mean, this is based on the winter solstice, and this is a really important time for winterovers because it's when we start to see literally the light at the end of the tunnel. It's the darkest part of the year, and we know that we only have 2 more months of darkness to get through. So it's mid-June because it's the southern hemisphere, so that's winter. And we've been in darkness, and we really want to see that other side of winter. So it gives us something to look forward to. It helps us get through the doldrums of winter, and it really gives a huge morale boost. That's not just a fun reason to have a party. It's a very real necessity for people's mental health to be able to see that end in sight.
It's the absolute truth. And as we sit here talking about it, I'm actually thinking of all of the winterovers across Antarctica right now, many of whom I'm sure are feeling that sort of darkness, not desperation, but maybe for some people of just, will this darkness last forever? It's hard to think when you're in that darkness for that long sometimes. Here's a shout out to any of you folks who are listening currently in Antarctica, because we recognize, both Cassa and I, how that can be such a challenge.
Yeah. And I think that we have to give a little bit of an overview around when this started. It would have been much more challenging when these folks were doing it. So
that's true.
Remember, people have not been to Antarctica for very long in the course of human history. And so the first documented winterover in Antarctica was 1898. And this Belgian Antarctic expedition got trapped. Like their ship got trapped in the ice. And they were stuck on this ship all winter. So they were really struggling, and they had a lot of people, they had people dying. They had all these kinds of things happening. And their midwinter was very different from later on. So their midwinter, they were really depressed. And then their cat died. They had a cat.
No, oh my gosh.
On midwinter.
No.
Yeah, so that was terrible.
No.
The next one that when it really turned into a holiday was in 1902 though. So Robert Falcon Scott was one of the British explorers, and they had an expedition that year, and they were down there wintering. They made it into a party. So they had decorations, they had special food, they had speeches and presents and sing-songs and all these kinds of different things. And they agreed that life in the Antarctic regions was worth living. So that, I think, is a nicer way to think about how to celebrate. But you kind of have to have that placement of the Belgians to kind of understand why it's important to celebrate at that time of year as well.
Right. No, that's out. I can't imagine your like the one little light in your life, the cat, the little pet.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm kicking it on Midwinter Day. Oops.
I know. Yeah. But it's just tops the cake, icing on the cake. But it's a big deal. It's a big deal to be able to be in a position of celebration in midwinter in Antarctica. There's not a lot of people who spend winters there. It means that you've already been there for a while and that you're looking forward to coming through. And you had some really good points about why you love this celebration personally too, Keri.
I really do. This is such a significant holiday for me. Many of the reasons are ones that you've mentioned, because I've been through a lot of Antarctic winters. I have felt in many of them the real doldrums at that point of year. So just on a personal level, it's a real jolt. But I also really love how it is a very international holiday in that all of the countries on the continent are celebrating simultaneously. We're very far, hundreds, even thousands of miles away from each other. Whoever we are, we're celebrating this day. It's an Antarctican holiday. And as you mentioned, it's historic. So I really feel I understand what those dudes on the original expeditions, in some small way, their lives were a lot harder than my easy breezy life in a current science program is. But just in that sort of feeling, that need for knowing that there's movement out there, I absolutely understand and I feel connected to those guys from way back when. There was a quote that I loved talking about Midwinter, maybe putting together two quotes, Amundsen and Scott. But the idea was basically this, that when one of them was writing and feeling just in the doldrums in Midwinter, but he wrote himself a stern note and he said, look, when I made this decision, it was a mature thought to be here. I chose to be here and I'm resolved, and just noted that this is the day when way up north, as far away as you can get from Antarctica, the sun has just turned around and we're in months of darkness now, but every single second now, from now on, the sun is just inching back to us. And the psychological boost of that, it's hard for me to even explain how life-giving that thought is to a brain that is so kind of shell-shocked by a bunch of days that are same old, a bunch of cold that never seems to end, and a bunch of dark that seems like it could never go away. It's a real mental boost. It's very, very significant, or it has been for me and for a lot of people on that continent.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the counterpart to that in the Northern Hemisphere is Yule or Christmas. All of us can probably relate to the feeling of that holiday and why it's important in a lot of ways. But I think Midwinter is really special because it's the only holiday that the whole continent celebrates. So we get different stations that send different goodwill greetings to each station. And that is so special. It's such a great tradition. I love it.
I mean, we can explain how this happens. It happens over email now, but basically almost every station on continent will take a picture of its winterovers or of its station or send it out. Like for Westerners, Christmas cards are the equivalent, but they come in email forms, and you can see the South African base and you can see the Chilean base or bases. You can see the British, and everybody is just wishing each other the best all across the continent. And it just feels like you've got friends you've never met and you never will meet, but they understand you in some ways that people who've known you forever will never understand you. You know, it's a really cool thing.
And you had a great story about that I loved.
Oh, yes. Okay. So my first winter, I was in the mood. Well, my first years in Antarctica, I may be less like this now, but I was in the mood to make friends with everybody, like every person on station. I wanted to know them. When I realized that we were getting emails and I could know people who are working across continent and make these international friends, oh my gosh, for the extrovert Keri Nelson, that was just like, yay. And so I sent off some just letters, just wishing everybody a personal, like, hey, I'm just this person here in Antarctica, but I think it's so cool. I loved your greeting. Hi, I'm Keri. Nice to meet you. And let's just talk about those great Australians, because there was a station, I think it was Casey Station, who had sent out personalized midwinter dinner invitations to all of their people on station to come for the meal. And it had their menu and what the accommodations be like. And they made up a mock invitation with my name on it and said, hey, if you can get here, can't because it's 1,000 miles away in the winter. But hey, here's what your accommodation will be like. And here's what your welcome committee will be like. And here's what the meal is. And I just felt so loved. So thanks to those Aussies from way back when who sent me that invitation, because I just felt like, this continent is where it's at for me. It meant a lot to me. It felt so festive.
Oh, I love that. And that leads into what we do to celebrate. There's a couple of things that we do, but the main thing is a big fancy meal, a big special meal. And we do invitations like what you described. People work for months on some of these invitations sometimes. They're really fancy and lovely. And then each year has a different theme. So it depends on the year and who is running it and what people kind of vote on, what the theme will be. But that will dictate kind of how the invitations look and all these kinds of things. So for some of the ones that I've been to, we had auroras as a theme, which was beautiful and wonderful. And the decor was absolutely stunning that they did with that. They had like netting suspended from the ceilings to look like auroras, and they did a really good job with it. It looked really awesome. A lot of historical ones. So when I was first started was 2011, and that was the 100-year anniversary of when they reached the South Pole. So there's like markers that come up further on that. We also had a dinosaur theme one time, which I will talk about a little bit in a minute, which was great because we found dinosaurs in Antarctica, and it was fun to talk about that. And then just exploration was another theme. Do you remember any other themes of yours, Keri?
You know, for a lot of the history while I was there, it was pretty strictly just midwinter theme. And just to take it back, we'll just say this is what we're talking about at McMurdo and the way McMurdo Station specifically celebrates midwinter now. I do believe that at a lot of other places, it is a much more formal affair that really just commemorates the explorers, or it's just a formal meal. It doesn't have a theme, but it's funsy to talk about the themes of McMurdo Station. So that's what Cassa is referring to right now. But most of mine, Cassa, I was there for the dinosaur theme one. Mine have mostly been just explorer or history themed.
Yeah, as you said, it's going to be different for different stations. A lot of it's just the theme is Antarctica, like, wow, we're in Antarctica. And I think that's a good theme.
It is. And for a lot of people also, they'll spend only one season in Antarctica. The American program is not the only program that'll do it, but many programs, you're down there once. You're not down there for season after season after season like a lot of people working in the US program are. And so there's less need for a variety in the way that some people might think of it after lots of years too.
Yes. And so just to set the scene for this, we have this big cafeteria that's we call the galley because it's an old Navy term. We go in and they make the most amazing food. I'm always blown away. And Scott Base does this, like they do such a good job too, but this is like a 7 or 8 course meal. I mean, you basically go in and pick what you want. It's kind of like a smorgasbord for us at McMurdo, but at Scott Base, it's a little bit more of a meal that gets served in courses. But they save special items back. They create things that are just really lovely, especially considering that there's no fresh food or vegetables to be involved with this. They're using kind of all frozen, all canned, all dry foods. And the level of artistry that you see with the food has just been blown my mind through the years. We had crab one year, which was pretty special. I hadn't had crab for, I don't even know how long at that point. So it was really cool to have things like that you just wouldn't see on a regular basis. And it's just a ton of work. A lot of people are really working hard to make it happen for us. And so I always appreciated that so much for the food staff and the folks that were in the galley.
The galley staff and the chefs, they put so much love and so much heart into honoring the community and honoring the holiday. I really, really give them credit for, like you said, the creativity and also their management of resources. Because I know a lot of special things that could have been used earlier in the year are held back, and they're held back because this beautiful thing, this beautiful celebration that everybody's going to participate in is going to happen. And so special things come out that you didn't even know were left. Like maybe there's a few potatoes left and that mid-June is when you're going to get them. You've been out of potatoes for months, or if there's any fresh food that's left that they could just keep going on, some green things, if there's any left, might appear at Midwinter. And so in some ways that meal is a miracle. Like you didn't even know those things would be able to be had on the continent.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And do you want to talk more about the decor?
Yeah, let's talk about it. It's amazing.
When I'm thinking about entering the galley, when I'm trying to paint this picture for you with words, depending on the theme, we'll have a couple of different things happening in there. So usually we'll clear out the tables in the bottom and we'll have kind of a cocktail hour ahead of time. And that's all really lovely. And that'll be kind of a dancing area for later as well. And then we have like a little photo booth set up. This is again McMurdo that I'm talking about right now. We have a photo booth that people can go to and take lots of pictures with their friends and people that they work with. And it's a really fun part of the night. And usually that will kind of go with the theme, but sometimes not. One of my favorite ones that we did was the dinosaur theme, because we actually took
I love this one too.
Yes, we took those puzzles that you can buy that are balsa wood, that are essentially dinosaur skeletons, and you pop the balsa wood out and then you slide them all together so that you can make this little 3D card, like a balsa wood skeleton of a dinosaur. So what we did was we took the pattern for that and I printed it out on transparency paper. They're transparencies that you would use back in the olden days when some of us were kids. That's how we did it in school. We had these projectors that you'd use this transparency paper and project it onto the wall. So we took that, we magnified it by like 1,000,000 and made it as big as we could, because we have a lot of extra cardboard of the things that get shipped down to the ice they're called tri-walls. So they're basically 3 layers of cardboard. So they're really strong, thick cardboard. So we have a ton of that. And we used that and we cut these dinosaur skeletons out of this super heavy duty cardboard and made these, like this 10-foot tall Parasaurolophus. And then we made a couple of pterodactyls that had, I don't know, probably 15-foot wingspans that we had hanging from the ceiling of the galley. And they actually hung up there for quite a while because we liked them. And it was fun to remind ourselves that dinosaurs were there too.
Yeah, I do remember this Midwinter. It was very impressive. I think there were lots of shadow puppets or shadow projections at this Midwinter too. I remember spending a lot of time making little dinosaur eggs with people for the tables as decorations. So it was really fun to have a theme and then a theme party, because of course there's often carousing after the dinner too, like a dance, or for some stations it might be going to the bar and everybody just sitting around and having some laughs. But it's a whole night of like food and decor and just like so many things in Antarctica, we build the party. The good time that you have is going to be the time that everybody participates in. And this just happens to be a time when really entire stations participate in making the best, most special day for everybody on ice. It's really profound in that way in some ways.
Yeah. And this is one of the things where if you take one nice outfit down for the ice for any kind of holiday.
Yes.
And so when you're walking to the buildings, the different buildings, and you're wearing like maybe some tights or some kind of dress type of thing, maybe if you're a woman, you always have to put your heavy pants on over to get to the Cali. So I'm wearing like my heavy Carhartt work pants over my tights and my heels and walking over to the building. So that is just like a very uniquely Antarctican experience that I've had too.
And I just find myself going right back, like my brain's right there in the cold. And I've sometimes risked going between buildings without having that protective gear in. Big mistake, but you do it anyway.
Yes.
Running around town in your finery to celebrate the Midwinter. Such a good time. Well, I mean, I think this is a holiday that is so unique and special, but it's kind of local. It's not local in that the whole continent celebrates it, but it's local to Antarctica. Maybe a few southern countries will do this thing too. It's important to have holidays that they might not always mean something to the wider population, but they're amazing little holidays in and of themselves. It's not just midwinter, that things like this happen in other parts of the world too.
Yes. And I think that what I like about this as well, and this has become a kind of a personal holiday for me, is how more holidays that would not have necessarily been recognized before are being treated more respectfully and also institutionalized. And I'm really happy about that. So here in New Zealand, they have one called Matariki that is a Maori holiday, and it's a beautiful holiday. It's in the winter. It's kind of like midwinter in a lot of ways, but it's a time to go in and reflect and think about your life and where you want to go. It's also about the stars. And there's some Maori legends that go around what's going on with the stars. And it's such a neat holiday. And they made it a public holiday, I think 2 or 3 years ago. I love that that's happening. I mean, another example in the US is Juneteenth. That's recently become an institutionalized public holiday. And it's just us understanding these things that need to be commemorated and really need to be acknowledged and appreciated, not appreciated, but acknowledged, definitely.
Yeah. Elevating some stories that just weren't recognized by the mainstream previously, but are very profound holidays in and of themselves. Do you make room in your brain for personal holidays that you celebrate, Cassa, that might not be ones that people would think of?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always think of my dad's birth and death day. He died when I was 25. And so I always think of I think of his death day more than I think of his birthday. And I don't know why that is, but I just use it as a time to appreciate him and think about how he's definitely always with me. And I always kind of hear comments that he would have, for better or for worse, mostly for better. It's just his take on things. And I think about, how he would have been around my partner and these kinds of things, and just appreciate him, and I think that it's important to have that time to appreciate. Sometimes, some years I forget, but other years I don't. And it's a nice way to connect with him again.
That is a personal holiday, not festive, but just commemorative.
Do you have any personal holidays?
I mean, for me and for my family, my brother and my sister and I are all adoptees. And so we celebrate the day that we joined our adoptive families, I guess, as much as we celebrate our birthdays. And so for me, and coincidentally for my sister, that date is July 15th. We arrived to our family just coincidentally on that date, years apart. That's a holiday for me. July 15th, I'll be celebrating what we call our homecoming day in my adoptive family. I'm Korean American adoptee, so we'll have some Korean food and just, celebrate our family unit in general. But again, it's a very personal holiday, but it's something that it feels important to just remember that thing is a part of us. It's a part of who we are, as people. Anyway, that's one example.
And I think it's all about appreciation too. Like I had a birthday where I had a really hard day at work, and I was supposed to go out to dinner with my friend and her mother. I didn't want to go. I was just like, it was a horrible day at work. I can't do it. And they came over and they were like, well, they asked, can we come over? And I said, okay, fine. So they came over, they brought me some ice cream or something, but they were like, her mom said this to me, and I always remember this. And she's like, it's just a nice time for us to appreciate you. We're glad you're here. And it just, I love that about any holiday, is just taking that time to appreciate and enjoy the passage of time as well as our growth as humans.
Oh, that's so well put, Cassa. Well, I know we had a personal challenge for our wonderful listeners who stick with us week and week. We see you guys. Thanks so much for listening to us. So I guess our challenge this time around is just thinking about, yes, the holidays that you celebrate day to day, year to year, but are there things in your life or in your awareness that should be holidays, that personal achievements, anniversaries of personal achievements, milestones, commemorations of things? It could be in any category. What holidays do you want to create for yourself? And in doing so, are you going to learn more about yourself? Will you create space in your life then in that celebration? Or if you roll other people into that celebration for making your own personal world more of the world that includes things that are important to you actually and personally. I think it's something to think about. The example that Cassa gave about commemorating her dad's death date, or my example is just it's a different kind of thing. Those won't be things necessarily in your life, but where does it come in for you? Will you learn more about yourself and make a life you like better for yourself in thinking about those things? So that's our thoughts for today. Cassa, do you have anything else to say?
No, thanks again for listening. This is I love this holiday and I love this theme, and I hope that it was helpful for all of our listeners. So thanks for being here with us.
And happy Midwinter to all of our friends on the ice. We feel ya, and Definitely. The sun's turning around. It's heading back. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Antarctica Did That For Me podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to support our efforts, we would love it if you would tell your friends. And if you leave us a review on Spotify or Apple, it will help us find more of our fellow adventurers. We release a new episode every Tuesday, and we are a video and audio podcast, so you can watch or just listen. We're on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and more, or find everything, including links to our social media, at our website, antarcticadidthatforme.com. Thanks again for listening, and until next week, keep thinking about what opening your own heart to adventure could do for you.